Welcome to Renewed Hope After Loss, the podcast where we have real conversations about hope, healing, and practical tools for grief recovery. And I'm your host, Kelly Shoemaker. Today's episode comes at a really difficult time, I think. In the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of Arena, and the recent school shooting in Colorado and the church shootings, many of us feel shaken, heavy, and our hearts are grieving. When events like this unfold, it can be really tempting to just pour out our feelings on our social media and look for comfort in likes and comments. But true healing requires more than that. We need a safe place to process our emotions. I'm honored today to have a great guest, Daniel Kail. He is the clinical director and licensed professional counselor at Trailhead Christian Counseling. Together, today, I want to really just talk about the tragedies that have come and how we're grieving and how we're dealing with those, and have really how we can talk to each other and our children about what is going on today. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today. And this is a hard conversation. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, what can we do when we see those images? Give us your insight on what's been going on with all these tragedies and how to handle it. Big question, I know.
Yeah. Where to even start? I think with the first thing I would say when it comes, and I'm not the first one to say this, but when it comes to social media and news and imagery, we really need to, protect our hearts and protect our brains, our minds, all of those things. And that means limiting the amount of exposure, just like it would be with anything else in life. If we overexpose ourselves to something that is harmful, there's going to be a price to pay. There's going to be a cost for something like that. And so I think that, parents can definitely and should definitely be having those conversations with their kids about the amount that they're seeing, what they're absorbing, how they're doing with it. And then even having, we want our kids to be able to have freedom and choices. We want them to learn to kind of grow into that, because we can't always control them and all the things that are coming at them. So having those conversations about, well, how do you think it's affecting you? How does it feel when you see those things? How are you sleeping? How are you thinking? Who are you talking to? All those kinds of things to just help them process. And in some ways, hopefully get them to sort of, their antennas go up and they kind of see, oh gosh, maybe as much as I've been looking at isn't so good for me.
Yeah, great point. And it's one of those things that, sometimes as parents or sometimes we don't think about it, that these are people that we've never met a lot of times. So I'm not talking about necessarily the school shootings where you go to the same school. But with what's happened in the last month, you may not know any of these people. So you're kind of wondering, well, why is this affecting me? And again, why is this affecting my child? And it's still, and I think you make a very good point of bringing up, how are you feeling? And not dismissing how they feel, because they may feel overwhelmingly sad about what's going on and not really understanding it, because it's like, wait, I don't even know these people. So why am I having such a heavy heart when I don't know these people?
Yeah. It's a great point, Kelly. And I think there is some, and I know this is your area of expertise. There's certainly some grief involved in all of this, but I think there's dimensions of grief that occur with some of this. So sometimes what our kids or even ourselves are being exposed to is the grief of living in a really unsettled and unsafe world. And when those realities become our reality, when we're exposed to them and we're regularly seeing those things, almost being tapped on the shoulder and reminded over and over again, this place isn't safe. Harm can happen to anyone at any time. It's incredibly unsettling. You sort of, and I'm sure you went through this, I know I did, that as you sort of wake up to some of the horrors of the world, you start to lose some of your innocence as a child. And any kind of loss is connected to grief.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I realized is it's, you don't know them, but like you said, it's those intangibles. You feel the loss of, hey, that freedom that I can go to a college thing, or I can go on the light rail and feel safe, or I can go to school and feel safe. And it's just like, where can I feel safe? And so it's that loss of safety that's kind of intangible because it's not like a person. It's a concept. It's a lot, it's a safety is like a concept. So it's harder to grasp that sometimes that we can
Yeah,
grieve that.
I totally agree. These are the types of things that impact like our worldview, the way that we see the world and we see ourselves in it and how we
Mhm.
interact with the world and the people and the events that happen in it. And every time something globally tragic happens or locally, anything that's sort of, a little bit distant from us, but close enough to change the way that we see and experience the world, it's life altering. I remember
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I was in elementary school during the Challenger explosion. And that was, similar to what you're describing. I didn't know any of those people. And it was on a TV,
Mhm.
that was rolled into our room and we were
Yes.
watching this
In the
thing.
classroom.
Yeah. But it deeply affected everybody who saw it because it was like, this stuff happens. Like, I don't know. It just, again, it's kind of that idea of like an awakening, and awakenings aren't always like wonderful things.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that we do talk about too in the grief recovery method is that grief is cumulative. So if we haven't dealt with some grief in our past, that it's like it builds. And so all of a sudden it's just bigger because you can connect to your grief of your past. And you don't
Hmm.
realize it sometimes that all of a sudden all these emotions come up, and some of it is, yes, what's happening today, but some of it is what's happened before. And I never dealt with it, but you still sometimes don't recognize it that it's that. Sometimes it's so we bury it so far because often we don't. And you probably know this very well from all the people you've helped over the years, is we have a tendency to bury our feelings. We don't want people to, the sadness, I should say the sadness. Happy feelings are very, share with everybody, share with the world when you're happy. But when you're sad, it's often, we push it down. I talk about, maybe because I grew
Yeah.
up in California, I talk about it being a beach ball and we're holding it
Mm.
underwater. And, you can only hold it underwater for so long. And then when it explodes, it comes up. For me, it came up as anger.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it would explode over people that it had nothing to do with. It would explode over coworkers or family members when I was really sad about my mom dying. The same
Yeah.
thing is kind of happening, I think happens here. It's like it brings up all those feelings of people that we've lost if we haven't really dealt with all that feeling that we've buried for so long.
Yeah. I agree with you. And in cases like this, we're surrounded by people that are all going through all kinds of different, dynamics and a spectrum of emotions in the way that they're dealing with it. And so in some ways we kind of feel like, oh, this is nice. At least I'm not alone in my suffering, but
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
all managing through it and trying to figure it out in our own unique ways because we all have our own stories. So it's
Yeah.
different.
You mentioned, I know, yeah, we were talking earlier and you were talking about our emotions being roller coasters. So, what do we do with that? Our emotions are up and down with this grief.
Yeah. So I'm a big surprise. I'm a big believer in sort of engaging, your own story, your own life, your own feelings, and not stuffing them, not treating them like a beach ball and trying to shove them
Mhm.
underwater, but using it as an opportunity to explore those. So understanding and accepting that your emotional life is going to be full of ups and downs and can be a bit like a roller coaster, especially when something significant goes on in your life,
Mhm.
but moving into that instead of just avoiding it and being powerless with it, but actually stepping into it, whether that's with a friend or a loved one that you're talking about it with, or even a professional, but using that as an opportunity to kind of learn about yourself. I'm also a big believer in like awareness. I think that for most of the clients I've worked with over the years, this kind of awareness of oneself and why things are going on is probably one of the biggest parts of healing that can take place. It's not a matter of just
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, how do I get over it? How do I get through it? And what's on the other side of this?" Kind of all this like forward thinking, like, how do I just get past it sort of thing. It's more like
Right.
the exploration. What's going on in me? What can I learn from this? What can I take from this? Because I'm not just going to magically come out of it. And so,
Yeah.
one of the
Right.
things I like about like Kelly, you and the work that you do, you took some awful things that happened to you, some traumatic events and terrible things you went through, and you did something with it. You took some kind of
Mhm.
action. Now, does that mean that you never have negative thoughts or sad thoughts about the things that have happened to you again? I kind of doubt it. But a lot of these things stick with us forever. But in learning about yourself and in talking to other people and connecting in the way that you do, you've opened up your mind and your heart to this whole other way of evaluating and seeing your own circumstances and how you are living in it and through it.
Yeah. So for people that have just heard this podcast and haven't heard my story before, I'm a grief recovery specialist, and I got into that because my mom died when I was in college. But a few years before my mom died, because she was my rock, a couple years before that, I had a traumatic brain injury where I had to leave school. I had to relearn how to learn. It was a really difficult time. And my mom was like the rock. And then all of a sudden she's gone too. Very emotional time. The reason I like what I do, the grief recovery method, is because I learned to identify, like you said, it's really important to say how you feel, to not bury it, to say how you feel. But it's really important too, to not stay there. Sometimes we say how we feel and we just stay stuck. This is who I am. I had a traumatic brain injury. My mom died and I'm just going to be miserable. This is the new me, right? But it's really important to be able to process it and to get through it, but you have to identify it and get through it so that you don't stay there, because we don't have to stay there. We can have hope that there is a better time in the future. There is, you can heal from those events.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about, Kelly, when you talk about staying stuck in it, it's almost like, and we see this in all areas, even outside of grief and that sort of thing. But it's like building your identity on these things that happen, and that's very problematic. If your identity is built on something that's tragic or traumatic, that'll be reinforced by events over and over and over again. It seems weird and like you wouldn't think consciously that you would do this, but you almost start to look for ways for that to be reinforced because it makes sense out of the life that you're building.
You're comfortable in that place, right? In that new identity, you're kind of comfortable. And it sounds weird, like you said. It sounds weird, but
there's who would do that? But
right. But one of the things is that roller coaster and getting through the grief. One thing I want to talk about and really want your input is that sometimes I think, we don't know where to go, and sometimes you want to talk to somebody, and a lot of times now it's social media. So I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to tell people how I feel about this event. I'm going to comment on this person's post, or I'm going to make my own post, and I'm going to see how many comments that people understand how I feel, that they like what I'm saying, they understand me.
Yeah.
But, I want to talk about that. That's not really the safest place to go when you're grieving, because you need to be honest, but you also need to move forward. And I think sometimes we get stuck if we're just doing social media and wanting people to heal. We wanted to heal by posting on stuff like that.
Yeah. Boy, that's an incredibly good point. And I'm glad you brought it up. This, as we were talking at the beginning of this, learning how to kind of protect ourselves, protect our hearts and our minds from not going further into a pit of despair, but trying to process, within it and through it in the healthiest way possible. The thing with social media, I think that is incredibly challenging. It's social media. It's in the name itself. It's social. It's a way to connect, for people to connect. Unfortunately, it's not, I won't say it's not real connection. Maybe it's not genuine or authentic as like a face-to-face conversation with another person. So unfortunately, you might post something online about a struggle that you're having or a grieving moment or sadness over something that's occurring, and you might get 10 to 20 likes or people commenting that feel very supportive and loving, but it only takes one sort of person with an insensitive comment to disrupt all of that and to potentially make you spiral downward even further. So I don't think that social media or online platforms are really a good way for the most part for anybody to heal. I just think it's too narrow. And I think that we need a broad space to be able to invite people into a real space. So, my hope and prayer for people would be that they have a community, real community, whether it's, their family, their friends, their school, work, place of worship, whatever it might look like, where they can actually have face-to-face conversations. There's a great proverb that mentions the importance of, it says to guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. And I think that when we
Mm.
are using social media to try and process some pain or difficulty in our lives, I think it's unwise. And I don't think we're really guarding our hearts as well as we should. In fact, in some ways, we might be opening our hearts to attack. And I think, whether you're a Christian or not, I think that's some valuable wisdom, to guard your heart. That doesn't mean to build up walls and never allow people to get in, but be mindful about the things that you share and how you share them and the environments that they're shared in, because it could end up, bouncing back to you in a way that's harmful when what you're really looking for is some healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and beyond all that, I mean, it shouldn't take a person very long to just look at like what's going on online to see how polarized we are. And even people that you think are your friends or your allies or, really intimate connections, they might not share your perspective and your viewpoint.
Yeah.
And then you get into like a debate over something that you're grieving or mourning or going through difficult. You're like, this isn't what I wanted. I didn't want to talk about, the issue. I wanted to talk about how I'm feeling, but that's hard to get across in like a post or something.
It also, also saying that is you can read a post and you could read it wrong. You can see a video, a short, because we're into, quick, let's watch a short of a long, we're doing a long video and there'll be shorts. And so you'll just see a segment of something they talked about, or you'll read a segment, or sometimes I have trouble reading. I am dyslexic. So I might take something completely out of context.
Yeah.
And so it might be something that they totally misunderstood what you said or what your heart was trying to say. Maybe because your heart is hurting so much that you didn't say it exactly the way you meant it either. So there's so many ways to miscommunicate on social media, whether it's texting or seeing shorts or just part of a conversation, and not being able to sit down and talk to someone one-on-one or on a Zoom or whatever, but actually being able to see somebody and talking to them, relating to them on the phone or a Zoom or, but seeing it on social media, we like to do quick and we swipe, right? We look at something quickly and we swipe and you're like, man, that makes me mad. And I'm going to shoot a message back to them. And sometimes it's just a misunderstanding of what's really on our hearts. And so then you have somebody responding to you in such a cruel way because they misunderstood what you were trying to say, or somebody reads something that you post and they misunderstand what you say. So there's this back and forth of when we're not really knowing really what we're trying to say or who we are sometimes.
Yeah. Again, I agree with you. It's that sort of idea of the tangible versus the intangible, right? It's not that what's occurring on social media or even in the news or globally isn't real, but it's not the real thing. It's not tangible. So something I've thought about a lot lately is I have friends on social media that I communicate with, and even people that I know really well, like quite intimately, that they'll write things or comment on things or post things that sort of annoy me or bother me or trouble me. But when I'm with these people, they almost never annoy me or bother me or trouble me. So evaluating, okay, well, what's really going on here?
Right.
Is it really about the person? I don't think so. I think it's about the medium.
Right. Well, and we jump so quickly to, well, that's what they were saying. And I'm offended. So I'm going to respond back in that respect.
Yeah.
I think it's so,
if it's sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
If it's the media and social media and these types of things that are upsetting you and causing you grief, don't go there to heal.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about where's a safe place to go, because, some people, they have family, friends. Mm-hmm. That might be a safe place. May not be. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in community and connectivity, real community, authentic community. And again, that might look like friends, family, school, work, know your people, know who's with you and who's for you.
Yeah.
And create that place of connection for yourself so that you've got it, because you're going to need it and our kids are going to need it. It's one of the things I think that as I've seen my own kids grow up, that I've seen more valuable than just about anything else, whether it's their education or the jobs that they have or these different things. It's their relationships with people that they feel truly love and support them for who they are and the stage of life that they're in. And they feel like they're held, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And they feel warm when they're around them. And I think it's critical. And if you struggle to have that, maybe you look for a professional to help you process through those things. And maybe even through that professional relationship, they can help you learn or develop some tools to be able to build that community for yourself. We are not intended to go through life alone or in isolation. And, social media and things like that it's just my own personal opinion. It's not true community.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I think one thing too I want to add is that that's that safe place for you if you're grieving. Now I'm talking because I'm a grief
Right.
professional, is someone or a couple people that don't analyze, judge, or critique you when you're trying to share your feelings.
Yeah.
When you're trying to say, oh man, my heart is breaking because of this, that, or the other thing, and somebody says, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps or get
Yeah.
over it, that's really not a place that's safe for that. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not safe for everything else, but for
Yeah.
that, you need to find someone that can listen to your heart. Because what we're trying to do in grief is, if you think of grief as you have your heart and you have all this junk, and I just see it as like a bunch of squiggly lines in your heart and it's covering inside your heart and it doesn't
Yeah.
have room for anyone. And we need to get that grief out. So just being a safe place to get that out so that it can be filled with truth and for love and other people can fill that heart.
That's good.
But so I think for grief, that's that. And I like what you said. It's just, to build those relationships. If you don't know how, then it's a place where, and if you feel like you don't have anyone, there's like no one out there that you connect with, a counselor, with a grief recovery specialist. And then if you need to build tools to learn how to be out in the community and build relationships, go to a counselor.
Yeah.
I do grief. A counselor will help you with those other tools. I do the grief tools. He does all the tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just for everybody that hears this, my heart is, I don't want you to feel alone and like there's no one that you could reach out that would be safe.
Right.
And so if you feel that way, reach out to me, and I'll reach out to Daniel. I'll have his information. If we're not the right person, because you need to find the right person that you feel safe with, right?
Right.
We
Yeah.
can help you find resources or try to find resources for you. Other grief recovery specialists, other counselors. My heart is that you can find someone to hear your heart and to hear your grief and to help you through that if you need it.
Yeah. And it's okay. I'm fully aware that I'm not the perfect fit counselor for everybody who calls or walks in the door. Like, I think that I don't know anybody who would be, perfect for every person. So sometimes it takes more than once, to see if you have the right connection with a person that you really trust or feel like you can trust and is safe for you. I think also, though, on the reverse end of that, as a person who is, a listener, just some advice for those who are trying to help others grieve, maybe it's even your own children at this current stage, is instead of judging or trying to tell someone that their thoughts or their attitudes or their beliefs are wrong, if you don't understand it or it doesn't make sense to you, ask questions. Be curious.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it takes. People will often ask me, like, how did you know that you wanted to be a counselor, or how did you think that you were a good fit? And one of the simplest things was just early in life, I had a genuine curiosity about people. That's something that I think each one of us can build over time, but allow yourself to be curious and ask questions from kind of like a bit of a neutral place, just to try and understand people.
Absolutely. And I agree with parents. If kids are having a hard time, just be aware of them asking questions and be supportive of, how are you feeling with this? If they bring something up. I will tell you though, I just remember my daughter would always bring things up at bedtime. And it was like when we were super, super tired and we wanted to just like have our, time apart, and just have our time, adult time, or just our daughter would say, have the biggest questions, things that she was going through, her tough times. And sometimes it is at that bedtime. That's a tough time. And I remember like sometimes wanting to just go to bed.
Yeah, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, just go to bed. I'm just tired too. I want to go, watch my TV show or something,
Right.
But just be aware that in this time, with everything that's going on, that it might be, hey, what's going on? Tell me how you're feeling. Or even sharing yours, it's a really tough time out there. My heart is sad too. And just something
Yeah,
simple.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share on how people can look for support or anything? Final words?
I think just in terms of, I guess, final words, a question, and maybe this is just an issue of kind of, and this does relate to kids, but adults too, of like emotional intelligence and maturity, moving forward. I'm finding myself often asking myself the question, am I allowing myself to be polarized at this moment? So with whatever I'm engaging in, whether it's social media or the news or the people I'm around, the conversations I'm having, am I shutting down other perspectives to merely reinforce the ones that I believe and that I think are true? Because I think that's problematic. I think it's problematic in our culture, and we're being bombarded right now with all of these different views and perspectives, and we tend to gravitate towards the ones that we prefer, right? But we really have to, I think, keep a close eye on our own hearts and our own minds as we're going through that. I was thinking before we met of a sort of an idea, I guess, that I've been thinking through for myself recently, which is like, like I said, I'm a Christian counselor. I'm a follower of Jesus, and what I would say to that, and this might bother some people, and but I could say anything, it'll bother somebody, right? I'm 99% in my faith of what I believe, right? I tend to think that all faith of, the things that we can't, see and touch or whatever, all faith tends to come with some level of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 1% maybe within me that exists within my faith that has doubt or questions myself or questions God, or, just areas that I struggle with. I have to remind myself there are people that I know in the world and in my life, or even people I don't know, that live inside that 1%. My 90%, 99% faith is their 99% doubt.
Yeah.
And they don't believe that it exists. And that's their world. And that's the world that they're living in. And who am I to say that I'm absolutely right and they're absolutely wrong? It's important to be able to evaluate these things and not allow ourselves to be totally polarized into one-dimensional thinking, and allow other people to feel safe around us, to have their own perspectives and their own beliefs, and to walk through things the way that they need to. I'm not believe in God, but I also believe that I'm not God. Right. And so I don't get to dictate to people the things that they should believe and how they should see things and the behaviors they should have and shouldn't have. And in my world, I believe that's God's job to do
Mm-hmm.
those things, not mine. I'm called to love and care for people.
So that's great. So it's really important to kind of look at everybody as humans. I mean, that's what we are, right? And one of the things that I was going to wrap it up, but you said something and I was reading a social media post, and
How dare you?
I know, I was. And I've caught myself. I'm trying to not do it as much. And they said something, and I was like, you can't, it's really hard for us. We judge each other on one post, one
Right.
thought, one word. All of us have bad days. All of us say stuff that we shouldn't. I mean, how many
Yes.
times in my personal house that no one hopefully saw that I said something to my daughter that wasn't right? Right?
Yeah.
Oops, right? I messed up. But how much more, it's like we can't just look at each other for that one thing that we said we did, for that one ideal. Like you said, we have different beliefs, some of us. So judging people and hating people on our worst days sometimes because we said something on a post. So I like that you'd say, I got to look at myself, especially before you post something, and say, am I being polarized? Am I gonna make people angry at this, and just be more cautious? I mean, I guess sometimes you do because people debate, and debate's fine.
Yeah.
But we believe different things, but to look at, to not judge so harshly. We're all humans. And I think we've been judging so harshly on each other, I guess is maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I feel lately, is that if you post one thing, maybe it was a bad day, maybe it wasn't, maybe you said something that everybody hated, then all of a sudden you're completely awful and just a despicable person. And I just think that's hard. And I think we need to get back to that point where I guess a long time ago, we didn't have this problem because we didn't post things on the internet, right?
Right. Yeah. And we might say some stupid or crazy things periodically, with our opinions, but we're face to face with a person and they might say something to us and then we walk it back or we reassess it or we talk it through or something like that. It's almost like the world we're in now is so polarizing. It's like and I know I'm guilty of it, we read something online that someone said or something they did or something they even wrote themselves. And we go, well, that defines that person. I know who they are and I know what they're about. That's really incredibly problematic. And I think the reason that I bring this up is, as you know, grief and anger often walk hand in hand.
Yes.
Right. And so there's a lot of people out there with the current events that have gone on, wherever you are on the social political spectrum or whatever, you may find yourself grieving. You may find yourself upset with things that have gone on or the state of the world and you feel sad or some sense of loss. Again, even that loss of innocence or safety, if it's coming out as anger, it's something to be aware of.
It's still grief. It can still be grief, right?
Yeah. And grief, like we've been talking about today, is something that needs to be processed in a healthy way. And a healthy way of processing grief is not screaming at people on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and
You're
talking
welcome.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, please. So Daniel is in Colorado and Arizona.
Yes.
And so can you give us, and I'll put a link down below as well, but give us your information if somebody wants to contact you. Where can they reach you?
Yeah. Easiest way would be just to go to our website, which is trailheadchristian.com. And there you can find contact information and information about our programs and different counselors that we have in the practice. And again, we are Christian counselors. That's kind of our foundation, our values that we believe in. We like to be welcoming and have open doors for anybody that would want to meet with us, but we're not for everybody either.
Right.
Just acknowledging that our practice isn't going to be the right fit for every person. And that's okay. We need to have the ability to make choices in our lives about, our own health, our care, and our well-being. But yeah, trailheadchristian.com. It's a great way to find more information.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
For you guys that are listening, really, the events that have happened over the last, a month, but we also have all the fires and the floods too. We've had a really tough year this year. That if you need help or you want more information on how to help your children, please reach out. You can reach out to him or you can reach out to me again. And I want to emphasize this, that if we are not the right fit, we can help you look. I'm in Arizona, but I do it online. So I work with everybody. I'm also the Arizona regional leader, but I also have friends that are also grief recovery specialists all over the US. So actually, and I know there's a couple in Canada and there's other places. Nice. So if you need help, please reach out. But I want to emphasize, you can go to your friends, your family, safe people, talk about your grief. Don't let it just fester. Don't bury it. Talk about it, deal with it. It will help.
Yes.
And it'll help all your relationships because it does affect your relationships if you let it bury like it did mine. But I just thank you guys. Please know that you're not alone. And grief is something that's normal and natural. There's nothing wrong with you. It's normal and natural to feel sad in these kind of situations.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time on Renewed Hope After Loss. Thank you.